Think back, not years ago, just a few years. When you woke up in the morning, and things were already happening before your feet hit the floor. Strong, certain, automatic. Your body just knew what to do, without any effort on your part, without any anxiety about whether it would or wouldn't. That was just how mornings worked. Now mornings feel different. Not always absent, but different. Slower. Less reliable. And the part that sits heaviest is not the physical change itself. It's that nobody explained it. Your doctor ran labs, told you your numbers were in range or close enough, and moved on to the next item on the list. You walked out carrying the same weight you walked in with, except now you also had confirmation that nothing was technically wrong, which somehow makes the whole thing harder to explain, even to yourself. What I want to tell you today, right now, before we go a single step further, is this. The oil sitting in your kitchen right now can do something that most men over 60 have never been told about. Not in the vague olive oil is heart-healthy version that floats across every health channel, and means nothing specific. I mean a set of precise, clinically grounded combinations, olive oil paired with 4 specific things, taken at specific times in a specific way, that trigger a sequence inside your blood vessels that is directly and mechanically responsible for erectile function. And I know what some of you are already thinking. You've tried things. You've read things. You've watched videos that opened with a promise and ended with a link to a supplement you didn't need. That is not what is happening here. I'm going to give you everything. The mechanism, the preparation, the timing, the specific detail that makes the difference between results and nothing. All of it. No product at the end. My name is Dr. Mei Anderson. I'm a urologist and I've spent 25 years sitting across from men just like you. Men who came into my office not quite sure what to say. Men who led with cholesterol numbers or sleep complaints and eventually got around to what was actually on their mind. I've spent 25 years watching what works. And more importantly, I've spent 25 years watching why it fails when men do it wrong, even when they're using exactly the right approach. That gap between the men who see real results and the men who wonder why nothing changed comes down to 3 specific mistakes. Almost everyone makes at least one. The third one is the one nobody talks about, and it's the most likely reason for inconsistent results. We'll get there. But first, if what I've just said already resonates, if something in those opening words landed somewhere real for you, do something for me right now. Hit the like button. Not for the algorithm, because it tells this platform to put this information in front of more men who are carrying exactly what you're carrying. That's the only reason I'm asking. Now let's get into what's actually happening in your body. An erection is not a hormonal event. This is the thing most men never hear, and it changes everything once you understand it. An erection is a hydraulic event. What that means practically is that the machinery responsible for producing a strong, reliable erection is not primarily about testosterone levels. It is about pressure. Specifically, whether your blood vessels can open wide enough, fast enough, and stay open long enough to flood the erectile tissue with blood at sufficient force to create firmness. The molecule that controls that entire process is called nitric oxide. Think of it as the unlock signal. When your body produces enough of it, it sends a message to the smooth muscle lining your blood vessels, and those vessels relax. They dilate. Blood rushes in. That is an erection. Not a feeling. Not a thought. A mechanical event that depends entirely on whether that chemical signal is present, functioning, and strong enough to do its job. This is exactly why you notice that arousal takes longer now. That even when the desire is fully there, even when everything feels right emotionally and mentally, there is a ceiling, or a delay, or an inconsistency that simply didn't exist before. That is not psychological. That is not a confidence problem. That is your nitric oxide production operating at a fraction of what it was 15 or 20 years ago. And no amount of wanting will compensate for a vascular system that isn't receiving the right signal. Here is what the research tells us about why this happens. A trial published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that men with the highest dietary intake of polyphenol, a specific class of plant compounds found in certain oils and foods, had significantly better endothelial function than men with low intake. Endothelial function is simply how well the inner lining of your blood vessels responds to demand. When it's working well, those vessels open on cue. When it isn't, they resist. And resistance is exactly what most men over 60 are living with every single day. Extra virgin olive oil is one of the most concentrated dietary sources of a polyphenol called oleocanthal. What oleocanthal does, and this is the part that matters for us, is reduce the chronic, low-grade inflammation that stiffens the walls of blood vessels over time. Stiff vessels cannot expand the way they need to. Vessels that cannot expand cannot deliver the blood pressure required to produce firm erections. It is that direct. It is that mechanical. And most men who use olive oil are getting a fraction of its actual potential because they're using it alone. Olive oil addresses inflammation in the vessel walls. But it does not, by itself, directly amplify nitric oxide production. That requires something else. And the 4 combinations I'm going to walk you through address that production from 4 completely different angles, each reinforcing the others in a way that compounds the result rather than simply adding to it. I want to introduce you to someone before we go further. A man I'll call Marcus. 71 years old, former high school football coach, came to me after what he described as 2 years of pretending everything was fine. He tried a prescription. It worked inconsistently and left him with headaches that lasted most of the day. He'd tried a supplement stack he'd seen in an advertisement online. Nothing. He was exercising regularly, eating reasonably well. He sat across from me and said, "Dr. Anderson, I'm doing everything right and I feel like my body has just decided it's done with this part of my life." We'll come back to what changed for Marcus, because what changed was not what he expected, and the shift, when it came, surprised even him. Most men who've struggled with erectile function have tried addressing testosterone. And the logic is understandable. You hear the phrase low T, you hear that testosterone declines after 50. You assume that is the variable to fix. Testosterone matters. But here is the problem with that framing. Testosterone is the ignition switch. Nitric oxide is the fuel line. You can have a working ignition and still get nothing if the line is blocked. The majority of treatments, including testosterone therapy, work on the switch. This protocol works on the line. That is why these combinations address a layer of the problem that most approaches never touch. And the combinations themselves work. That is the thing I want to be clear about before I describe the mistakes. The approach is sound. The mechanisms are real. The reason it fails for some men while producing significant results for others, often men starting from a worse baseline, is almost entirely about 3 execution errors. The first mistake is oil quality. And this one matters more than most people realize, because it means men are faithfully doing the protocol every single day while the most important part of it, the polyphenol, the oleocanthal, the actual therapeutic compound, never reaches their bloodstream. Research from the UC Davis Olive Center found that a significant portion of olive oils sold in the United States labeled as extra virgin do not meet the standard. They've been heated, stored improperly, blended with refined oils, or simply sat on a shelf too long after pressing. By the time they reach your kitchen, the polyphenol content is negligible. Real extra virgin olive oil has a specific character. A slight peppery bite at the back of the throat, sometimes enough to make you cough, a fresh, grassy aroma, and a harvest date on the label, not just an expiration date. If the bottle has no harvest date, put it back. If it tastes like nothing, it is nothing. Choose cold-pressed, stored in dark glass, with a harvest date within the last 12 months. That detail alone separates an oil that works from one that is simply taking up space in your cabinet. The second mistake is timing. Taking these combinations at a moment in the day when the body's absorption window is largely closed. Most men take them on an empty stomach first thing in the morning, because that feels intentional and disciplined. It is actually one of the least effective delivery contexts for fat-soluble compounds. The presence of other food, particularly other fats, substantially improves how much of the active compound reaches the bloodstream intact. The third mistake is the one I mentioned at the start. The one almost nobody discusses. And it is not about the oil at all. We will get there at the end of the protocol section. And when you hear it, you'll understand immediately why I saved it. If this is the kind of clinical information you've been looking for, specific, mechanistic, the kind that doesn't come up in a 15-minute appointment, because there simply isn't time, Vital Health Seniors is exactly where you want to stay connected. Subscribe now and turn on notifications, because what comes next is the full protocol. Nothing held back. No product waiting at the end. The first combination is extra virgin olive oil paired with cold-pressed pomegranate seed oil. Not pomegranate juice, pomegranate seed oil. The distinction matters in a way that is physiologically significant. The seeds of the pomegranate contain a compound called punicic acid, which is an omega-5 fatty acid with a structural profile that is nearly unique in the plant kingdom. Most dietary fats have no direct relationship with nitric oxide production. Punicic acid does. It acts as a cofactor in the enzymatic pathway that produces nitric oxide inside the endothelial cells lining your blood vessels. In plain terms, when punicic acid is present in those cells, your body produces more nitric oxide in response to blood flow demand. Not marginally more, meaningfully more. And the reason it is taken with extra virgin olive oil, rather than simply on its own, is that punicic acid is fat-soluble. Without a carrier fat, the majority of it passes through your digestive system without entering the bloodstream. Olive oil is the carrier. The oleic acid in olive oil significantly improves cellular uptake of fat-soluble compounds. When the two are combined, the delivery rate increases substantially compared to either taken alone. The ratio: 1 teaspoon of high-quality extra virgin olive oil mixed with half a teaspoon of cold-pressed pomegranate seed oil. Take it in the morning with breakfast, not on an empty stomach. The presence of other food, especially any additional healthy fat on your plate, creates the digestive environment where absorption is highest. This is the timing correction that makes the difference between the combination working and producing only trace results. What to watch for in the first week: morning erections returning, or noticeably strengthening. That is your earliest clear signal that the vascular pathway is becoming more responsive. Morning erections are entirely a function of nitric oxide activity during sleep. They are your body's nightly vascular maintenance cycle. If that system is improving, you will know within days. Not weeks. Days. The second combination is extra virgin olive oil paired with black garlic. Not raw garlic. And this distinction is one that most people overlook entirely. Raw garlic contains allicin, which supports circulation in a general way. But black garlic, which is raw garlic that has been slowly fermented at low temperature over several weeks, undergoes a chemical transformation during that process. The allicin converts into a compound called S-allylcysteine, which has a fundamentally different mechanism of action. S-allylcysteine directly stimulates nitric oxide synthase, the enzyme your body uses to produce nitric oxide in the first place. If the first combination improves how your endothelial cells respond to the nitric oxide signal, this second combination amplifies how much nitric oxide is actually being generated upstream of that. These two mechanisms are sequential. Using both creates compounding results rather than simply additive ones. Each one makes the other more effective. That is the architecture of the whole protocol. Black garlic is available in most health food stores, and increasingly in standard grocery stores. The cloves are dark, almost jammy in texture, with a deep mellow flavor that has none of the sharpness of raw garlic. 2 cloves, chopped, mixed into a teaspoon of olive oil. Take it 3 to 4 hours after your morning combination, with lunch or an early afternoon snack. The specific preparation detail that most people skip: chop the cloves, then let them sit for 5 minutes before adding the olive oil. That 5-minute window allows the remaining enzymatic reactions to complete. Pre-peeled whole cloves, or cloves mixed with oil immediately after chopping, are measurably less active. It is a small step. It takes 30 seconds. Almost nobody does it because nobody told them it mattered. It does matter. The third combination is extra virgin olive oil paired with watermelon seed oil. This is the one that consistently surprises people, including, honestly, some of my colleagues. Most people know that watermelon flesh contains citrulline, and that citrulline converts in the body through arginine to nitric oxide. That version has been around for years, and is partially correct. What is far less known is that watermelon seeds contain a concentration of citrulline that is significantly higher than the flesh. And when that citrulline is extracted in oil form, the bioavailability changes dramatically. Watermelon seed oil is cold-pressed from dried watermelon seeds. You will sometimes find it in the skincare aisle because it is used topically in many parts of the world. What matters here is what it delivers internally. A concentrated citrulline payload in a fat-soluble form that the body can actually use efficiently. The pathway is direct, citrulline to arginine to nitric oxide. This is the same upstream pathway that pharmaceutical erectile dysfunction medications target from the opposite end. Those medications work by blocking the enzyme that breaks down nitric oxide. This combination works by increasing how much nitric oxide is produced before the breakdown even begins. 1 teaspoon of watermelon seed oil mixed with half a teaspoon of extra virgin olive oil, taken in the early evening, 2 to 3 hours before bed. The timing here is specific and important. Nitric oxide activity during the early sleep cycle directly supports the quality of overnight erections, which are the body's natural maintenance system for erectile tissue. Supporting that cycle at night compounds the daytime results in a way that taking this combination at another time of day does not replicate. I want to say something here that I don't think gets said enough in this kind of conversation. The men who come to me with this problem are not men who stopped caring. They are not men who gave up on their marriages, their partners, their sense of themselves. They are men who care deeply, which is exactly why the silence around it is so heavy. And when I describe something as simple as an evening oil combination that works on the biology while they sleep, I sometimes see a particular expression, a kind of cautious, reluctant hope, like they want to believe it but have been disappointed enough times that hope itself feels risky. That expression is why I keep doing this work. And the men who come back after trying it, the ones who walk in a few weeks later with that quiet shift in how they carry themselves, those conversations are the ones that stay with me. I mention this because if that cautious hope is what you're feeling right now, I want you to know it's appropriate. The mechanism is real. The biology is on your side. The 4th combination is extra virgin olive oil with beetroot and one specific addition that most versions of this leave out entirely. Beetroot is well established in the research for its dietary nitrate content. Nitrates convert to nitric oxide through a pathway that is entirely separate from the enzyme-dependent pathway we've been discussing. This matters significantly for men over 60 because when the enzymatic pathway is impaired, as it often is due to accumulated oxidative stress in the vessel walls, the nitrate pathway remains largely intact. It is a redundant system, and using both simultaneously is the difference between running one engine and running two. The preparation: 2 tablespoons of cold-pressed beetroot powder, or 2 to 3 ounces of cold-pressed beetroot juice, mixed into a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. The olive oil slows gastric emptying, which extends the window during which nitrates are absorbed into the bloodstream. Take it 30 to 40 minutes before any physical activity. Even a 20-minute walk counts. Movement increases blood flow demand, and increased demand amplifies the effect of elevated nitric oxide. Now here is the specific addition that makes this combination substantially more effective, and that almost no one mentions. A small amount of vitamin C, taken at the same time. A 1/4 teaspoon of ascorbic acid powder, or the juice of half a lemon, mixed in or taken immediately alongside the beetroot combination. Vitamin C prevents the premature conversion of dietary nitrate to nitrite in the stomach before it reaches the small intestine. Without vitamin C present, a meaningful portion of the nitrate is lost to early conversion that the body cannot use. With vitamin C, the effective dose reaching your bloodstream increases noticeably. It is not complicated. It is not expensive. It is just not common knowledge. And that is why I'm telling you. Now let's come back to Marcus. He came back to see me 6 weeks after starting the first 2 combinations. He sat down, looked at me for a moment in the way that men sometimes do when they're not quite sure how to describe something they weren't expecting, and said, "I stopped planning around it. I stopped thinking ahead of time about whether it was going to work or not. I just stopped thinking about it at all, because I didn't need to anymore." His wife had noticed before he said a word to her. She asked him what had changed. He didn't know exactly what to say, So he said he was sleeping better. She didn't push it. But he knew what had shifted. And that knowledge, the private knowledge that his body was doing what it was supposed to do again, was, by his own description, as significant as the physical change itself. I want to add one more person. A man I'll call Gerald, 74 years old, retired civil engineer, precise by nature and professionally skeptical by training. Gerald came to me with an actual spreadsheet. 2 years of supplement trials, documented with dates, doses and outcome notes in 3 columns. Nothing had produced results he could point to with confidence. When I described this protocol, his first question was the mechanism, not the outcome, the mechanism. So we took an extra 20 minutes and I walked through exactly what I've walked through with you today. Gerald started the first 2 combinations. 3 weeks later, he sent a message through the patient portal. It said, "The spreadsheet has been retired." That is the whole story. That is enough. Now, the third mistake. The one I promised at the beginning and have been holding. The single daily habit that is most likely undoing the work of everything else in this protocol, and that the majority of men over 60 are doing without realizing it, is mouth breathing. I know how that sounds. But the research here is not ambiguous and the mechanism is direct. Nitric oxide is produced continuously in the nasal passages and sinuses. When you breathe through your nose, that nitric oxide is pulled down into the lungs with each breath and absorbed into the bloodstream, where it circulates and supports vascular function systemically, including in the blood vessels that control erectile function. When you breathe through your mouth, that entire supply is bypassed completely. It simply doesn't enter the system. Many men over 60 are habitual mouth breathers, particularly during sleep, often because of nasal congestion, sleep position, or simply decades of habit that nobody ever flagged as a problem. If this is you, the correction is embarrassingly simple. Nasal strips at night. $5 at any pharmacy. They hold the nasal passages open during sleep so that your body can receive the nitric oxide it is producing rather than losing it entirely. Men who add this single change alongside the oil combinations consistently describe the compound effect as noticeable, because they are now both producing more nitric oxide through the protocol and stopping the overnight suppression that had been working against every other effort they were making. It is not glamorous. It is the actual answer. There is one more thing I want to give you before we close. Something that took me years of working with this population to understand the full importance of, and that even men who are doing everything else correctly often miss. Every combination in this protocol depends, at the cellular level, on the health of your mitochondria. The mitochondria are the energy-producing structures inside every cell in your body, including, critically, the endothelial cells lining your blood vessels. Mitochondrial function declines with age, and when it does, the cell's capacity to produce nitric oxide declines with it. This is part of why the same nutritional approach that produced results at 50 produces less at 70. The mechanisms are intact. The cellular machinery running them is operating at reduced capacity. The specific addition that addresses mitochondrial function directly in vascular cells is cold-pressed black seed oil. Half a teaspoon, added to whichever of the 4 morning combinations you are already using. The active compound in black seed oil is thymoquinone. A study published in the journal Phytomedicine examined thymoquinone supplementation and its effect on markers of endothelial function in human subjects. Not a cell culture, not an animal model, actual people. The findings showed meaningful improvement in those markers. This is published, peer-reviewed research, directly relevant to the mechanism we've been discussing all day. The quality note here matters more than with any of the other oils. Real black seed oil is dark amber to nearly black, with a sharp, almost aggressively peppery smell that is unmistakable. If the bottle you are looking at is pale, mild-smelling, or has a yellow cast, the thymoquinone content is negligible, and you are essentially buying vegetable oil with a label on it. Find the real version. Half a teaspoon in your morning combination. That is all. But do not skip it. This is the layer that makes the cellular environment capable of responding to everything else you are doing. Let me say something directly before we finish. The men I have worked with who make real, lasting progress with this kind of approach, who come back weeks later with that particular expression that is equal parts relief and disbelief, are not, as a group, the men who started from the most favorable position. They are not the men with the mildest symptoms or the best baseline physiology. They are the men who decided, at some point, that they were done quietly accepting a diminished version of their own life as the new normal. That might sound like a motivational line. It isn't. It is clinical observation across 25 years and thousands of conversations. What those men share is not biology. It is a decision. I understand what some of you have been carrying. The silence around this particular issue is heavy in a way that other health concerns are not. It touches identity. It touches marriage. It touches the private story a man tells himself about who he is and what he is still capable of. And most men carry it alone, not because they want to, but because there hasn't been a space where it felt safe to put it down. What I want you to hear, as the doctor who has held those conversations for 2.5 decades, is this. Your body is still capable of more than you currently believe. That is not reassurance. It is physiology. The mechanisms we discuss today are intact in the overwhelming majority of men regardless of age. They have been suppressed by inflammation, by years of suboptimal circulation, by a nitric oxide system that has been slowly declining without anyone addressing it directly. They have not been destroyed. There is a meaningful difference between suppressed and destroyed. Everything in this protocol addresses the suppression, directly mechanistically, and without anything you cannot find in a grocery or health food store. Start tomorrow morning. One combination. See what your first week tells you. Your body will give you clear information, specifically in the quality of your mornings, about whether the mechanism is responding. Most men who do this correctly have something to report within 7 days. Some sooner. You will know. And when you notice it, I want you to pay attention to what happens in the rest of your day. Not just the physical signal, but what it does to your energy, how you move through your morning, whether you sit across from the people you love differently, whether the weight you've been carrying feels slightly lighter, because that is the part that matters most. The physical response is the signal that the biology is working. What changes around it, the confidence, the ease, the quiet return of something you thought was permanently behind you, that is the actual outcome. And it is available to you. Not as a promise. As physiology. Subscribe to Vital Health Seniors. One video a week, built specifically for men over 60 who want real clinical information on the things that matter, and that don't get enough time in a standard appointment. Not a general wellness channel. Not supplements dressed in medical language. This channel, this information, for you specifically. I'm Dr. Mei Anderson. Thank you for the time today. Take care of yourself. You've earned it.